Hello, and welcome to Trekkie and Beyond, a Star Trek podcast. I'm Anika.
And I'm Andrea. We are doing quick dives into bulk episodes of Lower Decks because they're amazing, but they are a little short. And each one, we're going to go through them as a whole, as a big summary. And then if you missed the first episode, you'll know that then we're going to go into our favorite parts of Lower Decks because it showcases a different part of Star Trek that we're not used to, or at least not from the live actions. So let's get into it. Episode 6 is called Terminal Provocations. Episode 7 is called Much Ado About Boimler. Episode 8 is Veritas. Episode 9 is Crisis Point, and episode 10 is No Small Part. And so each episode, the first 6, is about a lovable, awkward ensign, Fletcher. Do we like him? We'll talk about that. And how he makes it difficult for both Mariner and Boimler to get some work done. And then we also see Rutherford and Tendi. They have a whole little excursion on the holodeck. We don't trust AI over here, people. And Much Ado About Boimler, we see that Mariner has a history. We learn more about her history within Star Trek. And we meet her best friend, who is a captain of her own very ship. And how Mariner is trying to come to terms with where she is within Starfleet compared to her best friend. Then we have Veritas, which is about Mariner, Boimler, and Tendi Rutherford are all caught off guard when they are forced to testify in front of a weird alien tribunal, or was it a party? It's very interesting what some people consider fun and what some people consider court. We'll get into it. And then in Crisis Point, we have Mariner taking over another one of Boimler's many I want to impress the captain schemes to vent out some frustration she has with being the captain's daughter and feeling that she's not enough. And does the live action role playing become therapy for her? I think it does. And then no small parts, we have the season finale of season 1, and the USS Cerritos encounters a familiar enemy, and we find that Tendi is trying to come into her own and being a mentor for a new recruit who, let's go ahead and say it, the new recruit was not worth it. So let's jump in to our quick thoughts about it. Monica, what did you think of these 5 episodes?
For me, the last episode in the season was the best. And it was really a capstone of everything. So it was an interesting take on a season arc in which like you wouldn't get as much value out of the last episode if you didn't see them all, but you can watch it individually and still have some enjoyment because it brought back some characters from other series, some mentions of some other ships, and the lower deck became the bridge crew. And so they were able to overcome some of their anxiety and fears and all work together in small parts. We'll dive in deeper to that, but that's what I liked about this whole, how it came together and to fit to one whole piece.
I have to agree. No Small Parts was an amazing episode. It did tie in a lot from season 1, and it was nice because it didn't seem like any of the episodes from season 1 were connected. And it also showcased how they were all connected in this. They were all sort of brought together in that last episode. But I have to say my favorite one from episodes 1 through 10 is episode 9, Crisis Point. Like to see, because I love, as I stated last episode, I have a love-hate relationship with Beckett. She is a strong female character. She knows her mind. She knows what she wants, but she also has a lot of issues that she needs to work through. And I felt like she battled with herself in that episode, and was like, "Look, I may dislike my mom sometimes, but I don't hate Starfleet." They're like she was hearing from her own self how she really felt about Starfleet, and so like sometimes people get wrapped up in their own mind and their emotions that they just don't stop to think, okay, I'm having a hard day. That doesn't mean I hate everything about it. I do have to say, No Small Parts had the best opening for me. Episode 10, when because it was a nice little shout out to the TOS. Like the TOS, yeah, this is called Those Old Scientists. It was a nice callback to the original series. Also, a roundabout way of exposing Mariner's biggest secret. Episode 10 was probably my second favorite, but Crisis Point, I can watch that one on repeat. And in episode 6, we see that Rutherford has created a whole little strategy person thing to help people learn in Starfleet. And we see that he's such a good friend because he's like, I'm going to show you, Tendi. I'm going to help you figure out how to do a spacewalk because, like, you should have known how to do that before you left the Academy. What did you think of Badgie and that whole episode with him?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the fact that they showed how all of these different ensigns, when given the opportunity to make their own imaginary place in a holodeck, go in completely different directions. So whether it's Boimler who makes a workout room where guys are working out naked, or in this case, he's making like a training environment. And so like everyone can use this different environment. The risks for creating AI, the AI can also work outside of the holodeck. And so his previous research, his little spare time project, end up helping to
save them all.
Yeah, but not.
Save them at the expense of him.
It's at the expense of one person. Who, also
like, be wary of your creations, people, because like free thinking computers is never a good idea.
Yes,
I will stand on that forever. We don't need computers to think for themselves. But in that same episode, another ensign who is that typical all-American, go hung, everything works out for him ensign. And we see like, oh, he's like a good friend. He's like, oh yeah, go ahead and go to the concert. I'll finish up our work. I'm a good guy. I'm like, cool. And it's like, okay, this dude is crazy. He is a good person until, quote unquote, a good person, quote unquote, until he is like, his back is against the wall. And then he's like, get me out of this or I'm going to blame you guys for it as well. And so not everyone who joins Starfleet is a good person or is a smart person or is someone who can think like logically and not leave a missing core thing in their bunk.
Well, I also think I see a lot of typical 21st century and previous workplace dynamics in these episodes.
Yes.
There's some people that are sabotaging other people's careers. There's some individuals that are self-sabotaging their own careers. There are individuals that overpromise and underdeliver in the workplace. And I felt that way with Fletcher.
Yeah, Fletcher is Fletcher's Fletcher. Because we even see, even though everything works out for him in the end, they go to rat on him and say that he did all of this and he ends up getting a promotion. But because he actually doesn't know how to do his job, he is quickly fired from his promotion. And he's like kicked out of Starfleet. And so it's
Mariner and Boimler should have stayed behind and did their job instead of going to it was like a rave concert. Yeah.
It was a choo-choo concert. I don't understand it, but they love it. But also we see some shift rivalry between the Delta shift and the Beta shift and how they don't like being awake at the same time. I thought that was cute. The little rivalry and like how the Delta shift and the Beta shift, like how they have the same similar personalities and the same types, but it's like all sort of rearranged throughout the Delta shift instead of they have the Boimler, they have their Mariner, but like it's like their personalities are switched. It's I like that little we're alike, but we're not camaraderie in there.
I also like the fact that they showed that all of these crew members can't be awake and active 100% of the time. I mean, you don't see the stars, the sun doesn't set, right? And when you're out in space like this. So it's hard to understand time, but at some point in time, someone's going to need some R&R, some like deep sleep, maybe some time to journal, write a friend, family member, whatever.
Go on dates because a lot of people have families and they date like each other, so it's nice to see there's different shifts. they hate each other, but there's different shifts.
Yeah, it makes you wonder with all the other Star Treks what those other shifts are. Who else is working?
Who's the B crew? Because I'm guessing we're seeing the A crew. So who's the B crew?
Yeah, when Spock is sleeping, who else is managing?
Yeah.
Yes.
So in another episode, in episode 7, we get to see a little bit more of Mariner's past and background with her best friend, who is the visiting captain on the Cerritos as some of the bridge crew were on a secret top secret mission somewhere else. And we see in the very beginning, Mariner is actually like falling on her face in front of her best friend and all of her crew. And for us watching it, we're just like, look, Mariner, what are you doing? Like, you never fall short like this. What's going on? What's happening? And then like when her back is against the wall and they're trying to save some people off of another ship from an alien race, that she just pulls it together and like just takes charge. And then her best friend realizes, you were taking an L all day because you knew I would try and promote you. And Marina's like, well, maybe I don't want you to be my boss. Maybe did you stop and think I'm happy with where I am? And I knew if I showed you how good I was, you would try to get me on your ship. And I don't want my best friend to be my boss. Wow, yes, it was crazy for her to look stupid in front of other Starfleet people and like essentially make her best friend look stupid for having a stupid best friend. In that Starfleet world type of sense of like, oh, you guys were friends together. Like you don't want people to think your captain is inept and only does like random pranks because that's how you explain. Like you want her to still have some type of, you still want her crew to respect her. But it was nice to see another side of Mariner. Like we learned more about Mariner of saying like, I'm here by choice. I'm here because this is what I want to do. I want to be in the lower decks. I don't want to move up. I like this part of Starfleet and I don't want the responsibility. Because not everyone thinks they want to be the boss until they're the boss. And Mariner's like, I don't want to be the boss. I want to coast under the radar. So what did you think of that storyline for Mariner in that episode?
It helped me learn a lot more about her because I've been concerned I say a while, like a week. So about
There's 5 episodes, 6 episodes, so that's a while.
Right. About like her mother, her father, nepotism, and everything else. But this shows her peer is at the captain's level. So she, in essence, could be at the captain's level. I understand that. But really, why she's choosing to stay where she's at, and she takes more risk with some of her the way she handles things behind the scenes, whether it's giving out crayons or helping out a species with food or whatever. I'm going to call them humanitarian missions. And she goes on these side quests to do those outside of a formal protocol. So, and she can't do that and be on that captain trajectory. So she's just choosing a different lifestyle for herself. She's paving her way, making her own pathway. But you have to see sometimes a parallel at the start of the character's journey to really appreciate that or to make a contrast. Yeah, so I found that interesting.
No, because you're right. Because when I first watched it, I was like, oh, so you're not just a goofball who's like not getting kicked out because her mom's the captain. You really don't want to be in charge. And that's okay to not want to be in charge. It's okay to be amazing at your job and not want to move up and be happy with where you are. Not everyone wants to be in leadership. Some people want to coast. And I think that's an important lesson that we need to learn about Mariner because, like, okay, you're not just a slacker. You do just enough to not get promoted. So, like, there's a method to your madness. I don't get it, but I understand you, you know?
Right. And I don't feel like she's coasting. I definitely feels like she has a vision. She has passion involved with it. She's just not, I don't know, I can't say pressing buttons and typing, but like keying things done on a screen somewhere, coasting, waiting for retirement days. She definitely has a sense of self, but she also needs to work on her diplomacy a little bit more and her mannerisms and so forth like that. But in the end, her and her best friend from the academy were able to see eye to eye, and it was nice to see a female friendship like that, in which they're taking different steps in their career, but they're still admire each other.
Yes.
And not
compete with each other.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about mostly episodes 8, 9, and 10 on this half. And episode 8, I don't want to call it a filler episode because none of these episodes sort of tie in together anyway. It doesn't. We don't know that at this point yet. But this episode was just hilarious. Mostly because at the very beginning, we see all four. We see our main crew just hanging out, working on their little ship that they have like a little drawing on. It's just a cute little thing that they're doing. And Tendi's like, you know what? I really want to have this conversation about like the worst villains, but I'm gonna run to the restroom. And then she just comes back and is like, so we're in red alert. And everyone's just like, no, we're not. And Rutherford's like, oh no, I messed with the speaker so they would be extra loud in here so we wouldn't miss it. And they're all just like, you messed with the red alert speakers? Why would you do that? And then they're all in red alert. I just really love that opening because it sort of showcased their moments of, yeah, we were just hanging out and goofing off, but then someone else is sort of hanging out and goofing off in a different way. And they're just like, don't goof off that way. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. We see that Rutherford is a genius, quote unquote, and how he made what he thought was an addition to the system actually was a hindrance. And it goes back to Badgie of being, yeah, no, you can't just mess with stuff and think it's all going to work out. So we see that they are on trial, quote unquote, for a mission that they don't quite remember. And then they see the bridge crew held up in this beam thinking they're suspended. They're trying to tell the story of everything that happened throughout that mission that they don't quite understand because each one has a little bit of a disconnect. We see that Rutherford kept doing an update on his implant and he would black out and then come back and be in a whole nother scene. We see that Tendi was intentionally keeping information out because it was redacted, even to the point where people's eyes were covered. We see that Boimler just did not know what was going on at all and kept offering bad scenarios to the captain when they wanted to get out of a situation. And then Mariner just was trying to tell the truth, and they were like, "No one's as stupid." And it's like, yes, they are. We all make mistakes, and they went into all the ways the bridge crew messes up as captains, as the bridge crew. I liked that at the end of it, it all comes out. It was like a celebration party. And it was like, no, this was not a celebration. This was a trial. And he's like, no, this was, he's like, no, he's not some judge. I'm just here setting up for my daughter's birthday. And it's like, there were ills. Why was there a vat of ills if this was just a celebration? And if you could talk the entire time while you were suspended, why didn't you talk and get us out of this? Hilarious red herring this entire episode. Because everyone watching believes these people are on trial, and at the very end, it was a party. It was supposed to be a party.
Like Boimler, I was confused in this episode. I appreciate all the references to lots of different species. They mentioned Vulcans, Romulans, the Gorn wedding. Like, I like that part. It was just a lot going on. It was really surreal. It was kind of like an outer body experience of it was and maybe it was just a little too deep for me.
It was because it was just, this is a hodgepodge of just scenes y'all drew that y'all couldn't fit in, so you made it all work for this.
Yeah, it was going over my head. There were some aspects that I really connected to. There weren't any really good big memorable moments for me from this, except for the Gorn wedding, because I was like, oh, normally we're fearful of Gorn, and like Gorns are really bad and awful, but in this case it looks like they were in a happy medium place. So that was a little a weird, but yeah, I don't know. I felt like I'm where Boimler was.
Yeah, no, this episode was very confusing. It was such a red flag for everyone watching. It's like, oh, I firmly believe they just had all of these scenes drawn out and they didn't know where to put it. And so they just say, we're going to make a hodgepodge episode. So if there was ever a filler episode in Lower Decks, this is one of them. But moving on to Crisis Point. Point. Oh, go ahead.
So one other thing, later on in this episode, they introduced Q. So that was another like Easter egg or character that was brought in from another series. So that perked my interest in. So yeah, so it was Gorn and Q, and I found those interesting. Yeah,
no, I agree too.
He added some humor too, additional humor. It's always, these episodes are funny, but like just his riddles and his sarcasm is lively.
So yes, going back to Crisis Point, episode 9. This one is therapy session for Beckett, because she is trying to liberate a planet from these rats that eat the lizard people, and is sort of reprimanded for it. And she is angry because the one time she really thought her mom was going to have her back on something, she got reprimanded for it. And she was like, how was this wrong? How was I wrong for stopping them from eating other people? Like, how am I wrong?
And directive.
But like, was she wrong though? Like, do we want these rat people to eat the lizard people? Like, do we want that?
But they call it the prime directive for a reason.
She's not eating people. But we see that she ends up overtaking the holodeck as Boimler was trying to use it to run scenarios of how he can impress the captain before his interview with her. And he does something that's sort of really wrong. He uploads everyone's like personal logs into a simulator to basically act it out like a movie so he can understand how people would truly react in the moment. And Beckett is so angry in what she's feeling that she just overtakes it, rewrites a whole bunch of code really quickly, rewrites the storyline, and is like, we're doing a movie instead. And this is her way of like acting out her anger towards her mother. And I will have to say, while the scenario was not healthy, the placement of it was. And she didn't do it to her mother's face. She did it in the holodeck. And we see that she acts out of her being the villain, of actually being the villain in the story with her two friends. And Boimler still trying to be like, Captain, where do you see me in 5 years? And Captain, do you like cookies? And we see Beckett fight herself, come to terms with who she is, and like understanding, look, I don't hate the crew, I don't hate the ship, I don't hate Starfleet. Yeah, the rules are annoying, but like she hears hard truths from her own self of just saying, look, my mom is doing the only thing she can do to keep me safe. If I get kicked out of the Cerritos, I'm done. She's protecting me the only way that she knows how. And then at the very end, after the digital Beckett dies and saves everyone, and they're all kicked out of the holodeck, Boimler comes back. And in a harrowing speech of the captain, she admits that Beckett's her daughter, and Boimler does not know what to do with that information. But this episode was all about growth. It was all about accepting. We see Rutherford tell his feelings for his boss. We see that Tendi puts Beck in her place about, I'm an Orion, but not everyone was a pirate. It was a nice episode. What did you think?
Once again, this was a way in which we could dive deeper into Mariner's character journey, right? So the captain, also known as her mother, sentenced her to counseling. And I think she should have gone to counseling a long time ago, but it seems as though the counselor has his own issues there too.
One more food pun. We're in a pickle. Dude.
Right. And then later on, we find out that the captain also seeks out counseling from that counselor as well, and is just as frustrated as everyone else who seeks out counseling from him. but she has to really conduct a self-assessment, and she found another way of doing that outside of the counseling sessions, and she was able to do that on the holodeck. So circling back to what I said earlier, how each of these characters are using the holodeck in a different way for their character journey. I was seeing some chaos, and I think she was able to see also what other people see, because it was like an outer body experience for her too, and to, like, in the end, interact with herself. So I don't know, I found that fascinating. You could look at it in a lot of different ways if you have more psychology and counseling expertise than what I have, than what I bring to this conversation. But there's a lot of times in which we would like to see ourselves in different scenarios, and it'd be cool to be able to interact and act that out. I, though, think it's really creepy that they're able to take the private logs and put it into a database, because
he wasn't supposed to.
But what's the purpose of private logs if they then become public?
Because when Boimler did that, it was like, you weren't supposed to be able to do that. You weren't supposed to be able to access their private logs because they're private. So it's like, Boimler, you're a stickler for the rules unless you're trying to use it to to further yourself. Because I'm gonna be honest, because like I have this issue. I'm a very open book person. So I don't really care what people know, but not everyone is like that. So sometimes people tell me stuff and I'm like, you have to specifically tell me I can't repeat this, because otherwise, in my mind, you're an open book person. And Boimler, while your private logs may not be super private to you and you're okay with other people knowing because you want everyone to know, that's not the same for everyone else. And you cannot assume because you're okay with it, everyone else is okay with it. And Boimler, like, you crossed the line with that one. You definitely crossed the line with it. Now, was it helpful? Yes. Was Beckett able to use it to have her come to Jesus moment and understand that while she is temporarily angry, she does not hate the crew. She does not hate her mother. She does not hate any of this. She's just upset. So while did it work out in her favor? Yes. But will everyone kill you if they find out you access their private logs for your own personal gain? That will happen as well.
It didn't really work out in her favor, because Boimler would not have found out that her relationship with her mother if it wasn't for this log data.
Well, yeah, I mean, that part didn't, but like her therapy, her calling it therapy, and her coming for herself, it worked out for her healing herself. Now, what Boimler doing that part comes into why he's going to get beat by Beckett, because he crossed the line. But her talking to her being able to fight herself and come to terms with herself, that part did work out in her favor. It did work out to where she left the simulation being a lot more healed than she was when she walked into it. He's just lucky it worked out, because if it didn't, she might have beat his butt for, other stuff.
Right. I feel like it helped out for the short term for that current mission in which her mother wanted her to seek out counseling, and she found counseling in a different way, but not for the long game in which she wanted to stay underneath the radar. And her parents were protecting her. And now it's going to be really hard to do that.
And that is a segue into the last episode of this season, No Small Parts. And we see that this episode is taking us back to a planet that was visited in the original series, or those old scientists, as Ransom would say. And it's the city, it's the world with the red hour and the god Landry, which is really just a computer that's taking over and people are listening to. I don't understand why, but that's not for me to understand. And when they're trying to leave, they find out there's still two ensigns on the planet, and it's Beckett and Boimler, and Beckett is handing out toys and drawing things and other items so they can, not do the red hour anymore, because why are we killing people? And then Boimler comes and he's like, you know what? I'm just going to do what you're doing. And she's like, I don't understand. It's like, yeah, I learned your secret. And she's like, oh yeah, not eating after 7. He's like, no, that the captain is your mom. And unbeknown to them, the entire bridge crew is hearing this because they're trying to locate Boimler by his comm badge. And they can hear his conversation, but he can't hear them. And he has this idea that Beckett's parents and Beckett are like in it together, and it's more of a happenstance of they just have an annoying daughter. Because I think Beckett would be the same person she was without her parents. It's just she knows, okay, if I get pushed too far, maybe they can save me. But at the end of the day, she's not doing it because they're her parents. She's doing it because she truly believes in helping people in a way that Starfleet lacks. And she's trying to do that. It just sort of works out that her parents can also save her in the end. Doesn't save her from being demoted though, because she wants to fly under the radar. She doesn't want to be noticed for her work. She wants to be able to do what she does without anyone knowing who she is. And Boimler basically ruins that, and he ruins it for what he thinks the reason Beckett is doing it. So again, we can both do some good and your parents can get us out of it. It's like, no, that is not why I'm doing this. Shut up. I don't want anyone knowing my mom is my mom. I don't want anyone to, there is that nepotism baby thing that comes like, look, I never wanted to be known as the captain's daughter. I wanted to be known. I wanted people not to know my name. And now people know my name. And then we see how the crew is honestly treating her differently because they know who her mom is. And she never wanted that. And she's like, I can't do my secret missions of helping people if everyone's looking at me because now they know I'm your daughter. And then we see that there is a distress call. And the crew, before she can really come to terms with what's going on, they are going to they're trying to save their friends from an early episode, from episode 6. And then now they're sort of thrust into a battle. We meet Peanut Hamper, who is an annoying little valley girl, if I've ever met a computer version of her. The Cerritos really comes together as a family, almost like in this episode. So we'll discuss a lot because there's a lot that happens and it's too much for, I think, a really quick recap. What did you think of this episode?
Once again, this was my favorite of the season. What scares me is that a comm badge would give other people license to hear your conversation or whatever's going on around you. That's scary. If someone calls you and you don't answer, then all of a sudden they can hear everything. Oh, that's a nightmare. But I really found this whole thing interesting because the Lando, so is it Landu? Beginning, that artificial intelligence in the very beginning that they reference for like the original series, like that is similar to the Banji and also similar to Peanut Hamper. Is it Peanut Hamper or Hamper Peanut?
Peanut Hamper, but it's Badgie, like Badge G.
Badgie.
Yeah.
So, but all three of those are similar because they're artificial intelligence, and they're then go rogue.
Yeah.
So whether you're looking at it from basically Starfleet has not learned the lesson because this is occurring again and again for each generation.
Yes.
That's the overall theme that I've noticed in this episode. Whether it's ensigns or whether it's even new people right out of the academy, because Peanut Hamper's brand new out of the academy, and it's artificial intelligence.
Like her whole family is artificial. They're all machines like this. It's very interesting. We also see that Beckett decides she can follow the rules if she wants to. I like that she was going to give back a Boimler by taking the promotion that he wanted, because she's like, I want to go back somewhere where no one knows me. And how she puts her hair up in the official regulation. She rolls down her sleeve. She fixes her jacket. She stands tall. And then we also find out that technically Boimler outranks her. Calling him sir. It's like, don't do that. She's like, you technically outrank me, sir. And it's like, dang, how much have you been demoted? Like, you know so much. She's so good, but she's also at the bottom of the ladder because she's like, again, I want to be unknown, and I can't be unknown if everyone knows my name.
She's very comfortable with serving time in a brig. I mean,
She
she's
did.
asked her mom several times, like, send me to the brig. Like,
Yeah.
she just wants, she'd rather take the risk and do something unorthodox and just go to timeout for it.
But she can do the crime and she'll do the time. Then we also see that the crew from episode 6, they're now in their new starship. And she's like, the captain's like, oh, let's keep this as clean as possible. She's like, I don't want to pull the plastic off. Take your shoes off. Don't make it dirty in here. And then they run into some distress and they are all killed, like, quickly. And I was very shocked by this, because even though this is an adult animation, this was like the first time I think in this series where it's like an entire crew was just wiped out like that on lower decks. And so it was like, oh, okay, we do have the same stakes as the live action. Okay, people don't just come back from the dead on this one. Okay. And we see that the Cerritos comes to save them, thinking it's like a little joke, and they're trying to get out, and they almost suffer the same fate as the last ship, and how they need to find their way out of it. And her mother looks to Beckett and is like, I need some unorthodox ways to get out of here. And how Beckett is able to use her knowledge of what her friends are capable of. And Boimler's like, yeah, they have like an open source code. We can put a virus in there. And someone's like, well, someone has to be deranged. And it's Rutherford, ha ha ha, I can do this. Badgie and I can do this. And then we have Tendi, who's like, oh, we could use Peanut Hamper to, like, send it over. She's going to save everyone. Spoiler alert, Peanut Hamper sucks. I've been saying it all episode. But we see how each one of those crew members and their own little side knowledge is able to sort of help save the Cerritos. What did you think of Rutherford trusting Badgie again? I just have to see what you thought about that.
I wish they didn't have to use Badgie in the rest of the story, because I wish they could have solved that on their own. But this is part of taking risk. They also hadn't really tested Badgie outside of this space. I don't think but they were in such dire straits here. I'm trying to remember if this was also the point in which the enemies had beamed aboard.
Yes.
Okay.
The Catholics have slowly beamed aboard the Cerritos.
Right. And so the nice thing is, Mariner had already hid some of her contraband. So they were able to use resources that they had hidden. It's just they needed more powerful resources. And then they just went to the holodeck and try to use this image out, or this artificial intelligence, which I have to mention that the first time I saw Badgie, I thought that he was like the Mr. and I'm going to age myself.
Yeah, no, he was, yes.
Mr. Like the Mr. Clippet from Microsoft.
Yes. Yes.
And I was like, okay, this is weird. And he looks like the Star Trek.
He's the combat
Delta symbol. In a yellow form and with his eyes and everything. I instantly thought of Mr. Clippet, and he was also an attempt for artificial intelligence that didn't go very well. And then they phased that out because it's not in Office 365 right now. But yeah, this was interesting. I like the fact that they circled back to Mariner's contraband and was able to use that to help fight off. And Boimler used the sword. She had mentioned that before. And so it was like lots of different weapons, the Klingon
battle axe.
Yeah, and like it was really cool to see lots of different weapons. And I remember some of those from Lorca's collection in Discovery.
Yeah. It is a hodgepodge of items and callbacks from other episodes and other series. This episode was just amazing. It was really good. We also see that not everyone who joins Starfleet again, we have another version of like a Fletcher with Peanut Hamper, because Badgie is able to create a virus to help them, but it needs to be manually uploaded in the Packlist system. And they're like, oh, Peanut Hamper, you can save everyone. And she's like, no, I only joined Starfleet to make my dad mad. Deuces. And like, enjoy being your insides being exploded. I'm like, oh, all right. That's how it is, Peanut Hamper. That's how it is. Knew I shouldn't have trusted you. Never trust a computer that can think for itself. Then we see that instead, Rutherford and Shax end up going over, uploading it, and Badgie being Badgie, the crazy thing that he is, is like, I'm not going to destroy them until after they kill you. And Shax sacrifices himself, takes the implant out of Rutherford's head, and is like, I'm going to save you, pushes him out, and Badge is like, no, he's mine to kill. Tries to blow up, but Rutherford gets away before he can. And we find out when Rutherford wakes up, he no longer has his memories. He has to start all over. And Tendi, being the eternal optimist, is very excited they can learn to be best friends all over again.
But also the Titans, who they wanted to, I think the Titans came in and helped save the day.
Titans, yeah, they did come in and save the day.
And
Riker.
Captain Freeman did not want to call them initially. She was like, oh no, we'll handle it. We'll be able to handle this on our own. And so with the help of the Titans, they came in firing immediately. So it shows that they were also part of a bigger collection to work this out. And perhaps Captain Freeman, although she learned not to like just warp out once they were captured, she's still not as polished to be like first contact or on these riskier missions.
I mean, yeah, but she also did assume that this wasn't a real issue from the beginning, and the Titan probably didn't assume it was a bad issue. They assumed it was a real issue and came in hot. She came in thinking someone just leaned on a button.
Which you should not do, even if someone repeatedly crying wolf. If it's the panic button, you should always go in with those distress calls with
ready to act.
Yeah, red alert.
And then we see that Boimler takes a promotion to the Titan and doesn't tell Beckett. And the episode ends with her leaving these like mean voicemails to him. And this is the one thing when it comes to Boimler, which is like, you are a little. I was so mad at him when I first saw this. I was like, you did not just take this promotion, and you didn't even tell her. Like, it's one thing to take the promotion, because it almost seemed like in the episode that him and Beckett had an understanding again. He's like, I wasn't jealous that you were applying to Sacramento. I was jealous because I knew you were going to get it, because I apply to these all the time and nothing comes of it. But you're amazing. You're going to get it. And then you take another promotion to another ship without ever telling her. And then you're like laughing off, oh yeah, she's just sending me messages. Because you ditched her. You ditched her and didn't have the audacity to even talk to her.
Once again, it's another like career faux pas, right? Because just, I don't know, a few episodes ago, actually the beginning of this episode, he drafted a letter of recommendation, just wanted her digital signature. Because he wanted to fly and he found out her relationship and was like, oh, can you sign this for me? So you should always thank your reference, keep everyone in your loop. And he's shunning out folks that he was with, his colleagues. And like now that he's promoted up to the bridge, now he's forgetting his lower deck friends. You should never do that. You forget where you came from in his case.
Any final thoughts for season 1 of Lower Decks?
Based on what they showed, I'm not quite sure he's going to find out that this position is the way he wanted it to be. He might have some second thoughts there. So I think we'll see additional career challenges and journeys. He might think that the grass is greener on the other side, and it's not so much. Because I also hope to see Boimler and Mariner reunited on the ship. So that means he's gonna have to return at some point. And that's what I think. There is a little sign. There are some signs of mourning after the security chief died. What I noticed is it's not as doesn't take as much time because this is more of a comedy.
Yeah.
So it's just a lighter air to it whenever there's characters and ships that died. It didn't dwell on the fact that another ship exploded or anything like that. So it's just going to, I guess, continue, and it's not going to be like, I don't know, a whole episode mourning the death of another character. So much more lighthearted that way. Yeah. So those are like some of my like overall themes and messages that I noticed.
I think that this Lower Decks is like setting the standard of not taking yourself too seriously, but still having important messaging coming across. There's some great themes from season 1, great ways of understanding, of accepting yourself for who you are, where you are, and understanding that your path is not the same as everyone else's. Mostly for Beckett, we are learning a lot more about her. So I loved season 1. It was a great foray. That's not the right word. Can't think of the right word. But it was a great introduction to Star Trek if you haven't ever really had one. It's a fun introduction. Again, not for children. This is not for children. And I think that the way that the show sort of takes place, it leaves so much that you can't do in a live action. It opens the door to a lot of parts of Star Trek that we may have wished we could see in a live action, but it just doesn't theoretically work in real life because some things are just either too expensive or too impossible to do on a soundstage or even with graphics if you like every single week. And here we're able to see a side of Star Trek that we wouldn't otherwise get. So I like it, and I'm very excited for season 2, episodes 1 through 5. I said 1-1 for people who are looking on Spotify, but I know my numbers. Any final thoughts before we end this episode?
I'm looking forward, like you, to but you've watched it all, but I'm looking to see where this all goes because from what I understand, it's an easier production, so we may be able to see these turn out much faster even after we finish watching season 3, because the voiceover actors record separately, and then except for some of the like the fight scenes and other things where there's like a voiceover, then they record those separately. And then also the music is recorded, each orchestra player is recorded separately, and all of that's added together, so it's easier for them to produce. And then so I'm hoping they'll be able to turn this around faster. And I like the fact that it's just an easier watch, shorter watches, so 30 minutes, and
not as heavy.
Yes,
not as heavy. I can end it and be like, okay, on to the next one versus what did I just watch?
Yes, I like to have the mix though.
But okay, so thank you guys for listening. And as always, I'm Andrea.
I'm Anika.
And live long
and prosper.